Shalom again from Into Faithfulness, where we're building bridges, where history builds walls. It's good to see you today. And you ever watch a TED Talk? Did you ever watch a TEDx talk? I suggest you do. You can find them on YouTube, and you can also find their own website. TED Talks are fascinating. They're about every aspect of life, and they're all very, very well done. And for those of us who speak in public quite a bit, like I do, it's a great place to learn some lessons. And one of the lessons I've learned from watching TED Talks is that every single TED Talk begins the same way. How's that? They all begin with stories. They're instructed how to give a good TED Talk, and they know, begin with a story. Why is that? It's because people love stories. When you were a child, you wanted your mommy or your daddy to tell you stories. You just loved them. But we don't outgrow that. Just try it sometime with people you know. Say to one of your friends, one of your coworkers, someone else, let me tell you a story. I got to tell you a story. You'll notice that their attention level shifts. They may move forward. Their attention widens because people love stories. It's one of the most underutilized ways of communicating that we know of. And now, with all of our technology and everything that we have, communication specialists are reminding people, tell them stories. Tell them stories. That's the way to make a sale. That's the way to communicate an idea. That's the way to build a relationship. So today we're talking about communication, about gaining a hearing for the good news of Yeshua, because what good is it if you have good news if nobody wants to hear it? And telling stories is a way that can happen. So we've got a lot to look at today. Let's begin. I want to begin with a quotation from the book of Jeremiah. Look at this. The Lord is the true God. He is the living God and the everlasting King. Out his wrath the earth quakes, and the nations cannot endure his indignation. He's the true God, and he's the living God and the everlasting King. Now, that's from Jeremiah. But if you go to Thessalonians, you find this passage. Paul says, they themselves report concerning you how you turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God. Notice, in Jeremiah, he's the true and living God. And for Paul, he's the living and true God. There's only one difference between those two, and that is the difference of order. Now, 200 years ago, if you had wanted to commend your Yeshua faith to someone, or anything to them, all you needed to do was just prove to them that it was true, and they would feel they had to deal with it. People felt they had to deal with arguments that demonstrated the truth of a proposition. Nowadays, it doesn't work that way. You show somebody that something is true, and they say, so what? I don't need it. Or, it's true for you. It's not true for me. So proving that something is true is not a way of gaining a hearing for the good news of Yeshua. I'm sorry. But if we can show people that God is living, the living and true God, if we can tell people a story from our life that gives them reason to think, maybe, just maybe, we have bumped into God in a way they have not, they may just want to give us a little more of a hearing. Because although people are not so interested in truth anymore, they're definitely interested in experience. And so we need to learn to tell stories about our experience with God, which will gain a hearing for the other things we want to say. Let me show you another quotation. This is from one of my favorite experts on storytelling. Her name is Annette Simmons. She's written a few books, and I love them. She says this, I'll make this a little bigger for you. She says, the telling and hearing of stories is a bonding ritual that breaks through illusions of separateness and activates a deep sense of our collective interdependence. In other words, in the telling of stories, people connect with each other. People become aware of their common humanity, and it builds a bridge. And here at Into Faithfulness, where we're building bridges where history builds walls, we want to build a bridge by which you can communicate the things that are most important to you. And storytelling is excellent for bridge building. So I'd like to share with you just in the next few minutes 7 aspects of a good story. Now, you may not cover all of these in every story you tell, and don't let that worry you. But this is to give you a feeling for what makes for a good story, and also it will help to confirm some of your intuitions, because a lot of this you already realize, but you've never given a name to it. Well, let's go and look at it. First of all, assessment. You need to decide who are you talking to and what makes them tick. If you're always telling people the same story, then you're doing something wrong, because people are not the same. People are different. If you're trying to share your faith with somebody who is chronically ill, or has a loved one who's chronically ill, or who's worrying about a illness of someone they know, telling them a story about how God showed up for you in the midst of sickness of yourself or a loved one is very compelling. But you wouldn't know to tell them that story unless you tuned in to who they really are. So the first thing you do before you tell a story is know your audience. Who are you talking to? What makes them tick? What are their problems? What are their enthusiasms? What are their hot button issues, either positively or negatively? And then on the basis of that assessment, then you select something from your experience that they might connect with. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, not only do you want to assess them, but you need to tell a story that you're passionate about. Tell stories that really matter to you, because if they don't really matter to you, they're not going to matter to the other guy. And if you try to make them sound emotional and compelling when they don't really matter to you, it just comes across as manipulation, and that's not a good way to communicate. But when you have a story to tell that really burns in your kishkas, that really is something that is deeply moving to you, you'll have no problem communicating it to somebody, and they will find it has credibility to them. There's a fellow named Jerry Spence. Years ago, he was on television a lot. He used to wear a buckskin jacket, long white hair, lived in Jacksonville, Wyoming. He was America's most successful personal injury attorney. And in writing a book about how he manages to do so well with juries, he says, speak from the heart zone. You need to speak from the heart zone, and that connects with people. That's what I'm telling you. Passion. Tell a story you're passionate about, or don't bother telling it at all. Number 3, every good story has a protagonist. That's the person whom other people identify with. It's usually the person who's telling the story. In Shawshank Redemption, the protagonist is Red, played by Morgan Freeman. He's a sympathetic character, a warm, intelligent character, tells the whole story about Andy Dufresne from the beginning to the end. So, make sure you are a character whose story people want to follow. Don't begin your story by telling people what a disastrous father or mother or child you were. Don't talk about your criminal record, And also, please, don't come across as some kind of person who's so spiritually minded you're of no earthly good. That's a cliche for you. A person who's just can't talk like a normal human being. Everything is, the Lord showed me this, the Lord told me that. Giveth us a break thereof, okay? Be real with people, and they'll want to hear more of your story. Otherwise, they will just simply endure it. That's number 3. Number 4, every story not only has a good story has not only a protagonist, but an antagonist. Good stories include a situation that needs to be overcome. Find a story where there was something wrong that needed to be right. There was something painful that needed to be healed. There was something sad that needed attention. An obstacle of some sort, situational, relational, whatever. Good stories include a situation that needed to be overcome. So look for those in choosing stories you might tell to people. Number 5. This is not always the case, but frequently you'll have a story which has an identifiable turning point, a pivotal experience, a pivotal event, or pivotal people that come into your life at a pivotal time. If there are such stories. They're very interesting. Especially people love surprises. And when somebody shows up, something shows up that was totally unexpected but really strategically fantastically important, people love that. So, if there's a turning point in your story, be sure to tell about it. People will find it very interesting. Number 6, there's a hero in your story, but make sure the hero isn't you. The story is about from your life, but you are not supposed to be the hero of the story. God is supposed to be the hero of the story. How does he end up looking good in your life? Don't tell a story that says, I used to be a terrible person, but now I'm a wonderful person. And you can be wonderful like me if you'll do what I tell you to do. Not interested in hearing that. That's not the way it goes. And you folks are too smart to do that. But let me warn you, don't make yourself the hero of the story. Make sure that Yeshua, the Messiah, is the hero of the story. Make sure the living God is the hero of the story. And you'll be doing what you should do. Finally, transformation. How is life different for you now? But don't oversell. Don't say life used to be terrible, now it's always wonderful. I don't believe that. My life is not always wonderful. I don't know anybody whose life was always wonderful. Even my wife, who has the great privilege of being married to me. Believe me, her life is not always wonderful. So, but do tell how your life is different now. How is it better? But don't oversell. Honesty communicates far better than technique. So don't oversell. Be real, be honest, and you'll get somewhere with it. I want to complete this with a quote from somebody who we all respect. Elie Wiesel, may he rest in peace, wrote in one of his publications that God created people because he loves stories. And every life is full of stories. People love to hear stories. They love to tell their own stories. When you meet new people, say to them, tell me something about yourself I wouldn't know. I did that the other day. You're asking them to tell you a little bit of their story. People love stories. God created people because he loves stories. Now, before you go, I want to make something available to you in case you want it. Let me see if I can find it now. Just a moment. There it is. Every month, I send out a free e-letter called Signals. Signals is a teaching e-letter. I teach on some subject. It's a problem-solving teaching e-letter. It teaches about some aspect of spiritual life. I might, for instance, have an e-letter about this series of teachings that you've been getting here. If you like this kind of teaching and you want to have it in print in your hand, it's easy to get. I'm just inviting you, anytime you wish, to use this URL, www.interfaithfulness.org/signals, and you can get yourself on our mailing list, and you'll receive it. I usually send it out every month. Once in a while, I miss a month. Sometimes I'm very busy, but I send it out every month, usually the first week in the month. Signals. So, I want to thank you for being with me today. I want to encourage you to look in your life for stories where God showed up for you in some way, and then begin to look for opportunities to share your story with other people. Listen to their stories too, because by telling each other our stories, that we grow to trust, to love, and to understand each other. So, for now, shalom from Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges, where history builds walls. Shalom.